Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is iOLANDE Melody. Today's topic is something that is very close to my heart, and I have no idea what I'm going to title this video, but the general premise is how to escape a job that you hate. I feel like I'm very qualified to speak about this because a few years ago I was in a position where I felt like I had been typecast into an industry that I kind of just fell into. And for so many years I was stuck in that profession, and my mindset at the time was I honestly felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't earn money in any other way other than working in hospitality. Now, obviously, I'm in a completely different place. I'm now essentially self-employed, and the work that I do is something that I am so passionate about. I'm in such a good place right now, and I look back and think, why didn't I just do this sooner? But then again, everything happens for a reason, and I will get into that. This video also has a lot to do with how you can live the soft life, which until I posted my previous video about how to live the soft life, I had no idea that this topic was as popular as it actually is. But it just goes to show you really that we're in the midst of a revolution whereby people are realizing that their life is valuable, their time is valuable, and that this whole hustle culture mentality is a losing game. If you think about it, the job that you're in or the career that you've chose is so vitally important if you want to live a happy life. We're told that we have 24 hours in a day, but that doesn't factor in sleep. So if you take 8 hours away straight off the bat, you're left with 16 hours in a day. For most people, 8 of those hours or more are spent at work. So really, it's vitally important that whatever you do as work really has to be something that you enjoy doing. For me, I've always had the perspective that if you love the work that you do, you'll never work a day in your life. But most of you guys probably already know this. That's why you clicked on this video. So I'm going to tell you not just a load of practical tips on how you can make that change realistically, but also I'm going to talk a lot about mindset, because there are certain shifts that happen that had to happen for me in order to get to where I am now. There are 1,000,001 videos on YouTube on how to become a millionaire overnight, how to become an entrepreneur. And whenever I've watched these videos, I always feel very overwhelmed. They often talk about some form of get-rich-quick scheme, and you're often left wondering, is this even real? Is this a scam? Now, I can't speak for all of the people that do this, but what I can say is this video is going to be nothing like that. But if you want a video like that, there's plenty of them. But I think majoritively, those types of videos are not as helpful as they come across, because most of the time, these entrepreneur get-rich-quick YouTubers are probably trying to sell you a course. But another thing that nobody takes into account is that these YouTubers who are claiming to have become millionaires from side hustles and other businesses are predominantly YouTubers. One of their major sources of income is AdSense revenue, which comes from being a YouTuber. And you kind of have to look at it logically and think, if these people have done what they've said and they're earning 6 figures a month from doing this drop shipping or investing in the stock market, yada yada, why are they doing YouTube? I'm not saying this to diss those YouTubers. Some of them may be genuine, but all I'm saying is if you've been watching these videos and feeling very overwhelmed and confused, don't worry, you're not alone. And I also think that this type of confusing content makes people feel even more trapped in their 9-to-5 hellish job, because the only solution being given to them is a very, very confusing one. So now that I've got that disclaimer out the way, let's get on to it. Okay, so you've reached the point where you've realised that you hate your job, you hate the industry that you're in, and you want a change. The first thing before you do anything else is to really, really get clear on what you do want. And for some people, this may be very confusing, but I have a method that I try with everyone that I know, and usually this will bring up the true answer of what you want to do. So, I want you to close your eyes and imagine that money isn't a thing in this world. Money is no object. But what you do is you've got to pick something that you'd be happy to do day in, day out, and that is your form of work. So basically, if money was no object, what would you spend every day doing? What would you be happy doing? What would give you fulfillment? Feel free to pause this video now and just have a think about that. So if you did this exercise and found that multiple answers came up, then that's great news, you have a lot to play with. If you found that you did this exercise and you didn't have an answer at all, the reason for that is that you're blocking yourself off from what you really want to do because you don't think that it's an option. And to those people, what I'd say is step out of what feels realistic and go into your wildest dreams. Some people tell themselves that they don't know what they want to do, when in reality, they know exactly what they really want to do. But because they've told themselves that they're incapable or that they're not good enough, they try to push it so far out of their psyche that they can't even see it anymore. What I always encourage people to do is to bring that back. That desire has been put in your heart for a reason, and truthfully, the only thing that is in the way of you and your desire is self-belief. Something that I really want to stress is don't judge yourself for your answers. Whatever it is that you truly want to do is completely valid, and you want to completely push out everybody else's opinion of that profession. Right? In this day and age, you get a lot of people promoting entrepreneurism and becoming self-employed and saying that that is the only way for you to escape the rat race. Now, as a YouTuber, I do agree with this. For me personally, I have to be self-employed because I have tried working for so many other people and it has never ever worked out for me. I know that what I'm doing right now is exactly what I want to be doing. But the truth is, when it comes to being self-employed or being an entrepreneur, there are pros and cons to it. When you're self-employed, there is an enormous amount of added pressure because everything falls on you. There is pressure to get the business up and running. A lot of the time, you don't know where the next paycheck is going to come from. There's always an element of risk and instability. And you also have to have skills in so many different other professions in order to make it work. Even if you wanted to open up a cake shop, you still have to understand about marketing, finances, admin, and then you have overheads and people that you have to pay. Every single industry and career has its ups and downs and pros and cons, and what you want to ascertain is what kind of sacrifices do you want to make. There are plenty of people that work a job and work for another person that live a very happy life. They've got stability when it comes to their paycheck, and because they're an employee, they don't have to carry the weight of the entire business on their shoulders. They're given a set amount of hours, they're paid for their time, and then they go home. And then most of the time, they can switch off from the whole thing. With entrepreneurism, you kind of never switch off. And for some people, your life and your work kind of become one. That's why I stress it's got to be something that you are passionate about. It's got to be something that you actually get a sense of fulfillment out of. For a lot of people, it is actually worth all of the risk involved with being self-employed simply because we have to be in control. I found that no matter which workplace I went into, I always had conflict with either a manager or colleagues. A lot of the time the business wasn't even run efficiently, and after so many years I'd developed so much self-discipline that I obviously got to the stage where I was like, you know what, I don't need someone else guiding me through this. I'd be better off just going my own route, being completely in control, because I just simply couldn't stand having someone to answer to. You know, so many people are on a power trip. They want to be a manager simply so that they can talk down to people. And it's a shame, really, because it ruins so many people's lives. They have no idea how much of an effect it has on employees. You could be working a profession that you love, but one colleague could completely ruin the entire job for you and make your life a living hell. But anyway, for those of you that want to just simply change your profession, here are the words of wisdom that I want to share with you. During my time in the hospitality industry, I felt like a skivvy. I really did feel like I was at the bottom of the pile. If you envisage the pyramid, right? I was there somewhere at the bottom in the corner, drowning, holding up everybody else. I see so many people who are in professions like this. They are doing the most work. Without them, the whole business would collapse. But yet, they are the least paid and the least respected. I want you to know I know exactly how that feels. Over time, this starts to chip away at your self-esteem, and because you're accepting this kind of terrible treatment, you start to tell yourself that this is what you deserve. And you start to look at the people who are in much higher positions, you know, the ones in the suits, and you see them just bopping around, moving very slowly, taking lunch breaks, chatting to people. You know that they're being paid so much more, and everyone seems to respect them. Some people are even scared of them. But one thing that I noticed that was very strange was that these higher paid people, and I'm talking generally here, generally there were so many of these people that were being paid so much, but they didn't actually seem to be more intelligent, definitely weren't more skilled, but yet somehow they'd wrangled their way into this profession. Somehow they'd just climbed to the top of the pyramid. And I always used to look at this and I felt very confused, because I have met so many people who are in low paid jobs that do work that a lot of people would not do, but they're actually very, very skilled and very intelligent. So what's the missing piece? The missing piece is self-belief. That's it. What I often find with very intelligent people is they have a tendency to have low self-esteem. They question themselves more. But the questioning of the self is what builds the intelligence. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Have you ever heard the term tortured genius? It's kind of like that. The reason why there are so many people out there that have these really high-paying jobs but don't really have the skills or intellect to match is simply that they don't question themselves. And this lack of questioning the self means that they don't have these blockers in the way where they're telling themselves, oh, I'm not good enough. They just simply believe that they deserve this job. Therefore, they have the confidence to make other people feel like, oh yeah, they know what they're talking about, and they get picked. They get employed into these jobs. It's a bluff. If you think I'm being harsh when I say the term less intelligent, what I actually mean is less knowledgeable. And knowledge is something that everybody can attain. Everybody has the ability to attain knowledge. In my old job, for example, when I worked in the stately home and I was doing the weddings and the conferences, it was me and all of the other lower paid staff that understood the bare bones of the business. We kept the whole thing running. We knew the business inside out, and we had to be very logical, very organised. We always had to be switched on, and this trained us to almost become like superhuman in the way that we executed everything, because we had to be on our top game all of the time. But during my time there, we had this period of time where we had almost a revolving door of area managers that would come in, and they'd be paid a massive wage to organise and manage the whole business. But what so many of us realised very quickly was every one of these managers that came in, near enough, was completely clueless as to how the business actually worked. It was almost like they'd never served a day in their life. So why have they been given a job where they are managing all of us if they don't even know how to perform our job? They wouldn't last a day in our shoes. Do you see how this doesn't really make logical sense? It's because the world does not make sense, right? This is what people won't tell you on YouTube, right? You could be working a profession that you see as being the bottom of the pyramid, right? And as long as you believe that that is all that you're worth, you will become typecast and people will only see you as doing that profession. But if you were hypothetically to change your self-concept and start looking at yourself as one of these higher paid, upper management types, if you can execute that confidence and basically have the gift of the gab, you could land yourself a job where you're getting paid so much more for doing so much less. And all you have to do is convince yourself and other people that you are deserving of that. This is something that I've realised since leaving that profession. Now that I'm able to look at it with kind of like a bird's eye view, and I've spoken to different calibers of people who are in different professions, and I see a lot of people getting paid enormous amounts of money for doing not really that much. It just makes me realise that I had typecast myself. So how do you execute this in a practical way? It's very simple. Once you've figured out the profession that you want to go into, start studying that profession. Do this so that you can become familiar with the lingo, the environment. And when I say study that profession, I'm not talking about going to college or university. Obviously, there are some professions where you need a degree, but there are also many professions that don't require any of that, and they are high paid. When I say study that profession, what I'm talking about is start searching for videos about the profession on YouTube. For example, if you wanted to get into sales, but you know absolutely nothing about it, start watching content about sales and marketing. Get familiar with the terminology. You'd be surprised how much knowledge you can attain from YouTube videos. And when you actually enter into the new profession, you'll find that people who don't do this actually might end up having a lot less knowledge about their own job than you do, because you did the research. Luckily, because YouTube is so big, there is literally content that caters for nearly everyone. Anything you can think of. If you wanted to work at a garden centre, but you had no knowledge of plants, you could study so much about plants on YouTube. The more familiar that you become with a profession or an industry, the more you'll start to feel like you belong. You'll become confident in the fact that you know what you're talking about because you've studied it. One thing that you guys will probably find very ironic is that when I was at my old job, obviously I've told you guys in previous videos that I was trying to break into the music industry while working in hospitality, which by the way was very difficult to juggle the stress of those two things. But one thing that I kept finding myself doing was watching videos about how to do YouTube. I became so drawn to watching videos about the lifestyle of a YouTuber and little tips and tricks on how to start a channel and how the algorithm works, etc. And I didn't do this with the intention of becoming a YouTuber. At the time, I was very certain that I was heading towards the music industry. That's where I wanted to be. But when I thought about the lifestyle of being in the music industry, it gave me a lot of anxiety. I started finding myself more drawn to the idea of making content and being able to be in my own little environment at home. As much as I love music and it is such a huge passion of mine, the day-to-day life of being a music artist had started becoming less appealing to me. Now, that's not to say that I'm not going to revisit music at some point in the future, But the point that I'm making is that if you feel drawn to watching videos about any particular topic, that's a very good indicator of what type of profession you'd be happy working in. And because everybody is different and everyone has a unique path, this can look so different for so many different people. Now, a lot of people give the advice that if you hypothetically wanted to start your own business and become self-employed, the safe thing to do is to do your 8 hours of work at your job, and then when you come home, work on your side hustle or your business. For a lot of people, this may be the only option to make that transition. And from personal experience, I can say it is very taxing. I had to teach myself how to produce music and video, and I was releasing songs, producing music videos while I was working at my old job, and I can tell you, I was burnt out a lot, and I wasn't really very happy during that time at all, because I just felt like there was a constant conflict between my job and my passion. So it is possible to do this, but don't make it harder for yourself than it needs to be to juggle these two things. Tip number 1 would be to try and make it so that you pick a day job that is less taxing mentally and physically. Retrospectively, when I look back, I was working in a profession that was incredibly taxing, both mentally and physically. And really, there was a multitude of other jobs I could have went for that would have been a lot easier and would have paid me even more or the same. And I could have done that in the daytime and then had energy left over to work on my music. The second thing which a lot of people get trapped with is thinking that the only way to have more money is to make more money, when in actual fact, how you spend your money is a huge factor on how much money you have. I know this sounds so obvious, but believe me, I think that this is pushed out of people's psyche. It is such a simple thing that people forget. If you won the lottery tomorrow, say for example, you had £10 million in your bank account, you could spend all of that money and become broke the next day. There are plenty of things that you can spend your money on. The trap that so many people get into is that they get into a profession, they get their monthly paycheck, and they look at that money as if to be like, that's all the money that I have to spend every month. And they spend that money on crap that they don't need because they have that subconscious programming that it's there to be spent. When I was at my old job, I hated it so much that I didn't really want to spend the money that I was earning, because I knew that the more money that I could save, the more in control I felt, because there were so many moments where I thought I could literally just say, fuck you, and walk out the door and say, I quit. I wanted to do that so many times. Because I knew that after a while I had saved up so much money, I didn't feel threatened by them cutting my hours, because my time was way more valuable. But I also knew that if I did leave my job and I saved up enough money, maybe I could just try for 6 months to put my all into what I'm doing now, because I would have that safety net. Now, I do have a lot of empathy for people who are in this consumerism trap, because I wasn't perfect. We spend money because we're unhappy. Majoritively, the need to consume comes from an unhappy place. We feel dissatisfied with life. And for some people, it can look very different. Some people want to splurge on a really expensive car that's on finance, and that's the thing that makes them feel better. But that car is keeping them trapped, and the shininess of it soon wears away, but the finance payments just keep on piling up. When you're in a job that is so stressful and miserable, you want to spend money because you feel sorry for yourself. I mean, I did. My thing was clothes. I would buy so many clothes. Not so much that I couldn't save up, but I still spent a huge amount of money on clothes, and I tried to keep it down. But the thing that comforted me was ordering the clothes and having something to look forward to, trying them on and thinking, yay, I look great. And then I just wouldn't wear them because I never went anywhere. They'd just stay in my wardrobe. But if you can develop a frugal mindset where you don't feel like you need to spend all of that money, where you actually get a kick out of saving money. I've mentioned in previous videos that yes, everybody has bills, but there are so many things that you can do. If you take the time to do your research, you can get cheaper deals so that you're not having to pay, I don't know, £50 a month for your phone contract. A lot of people also find that there's a lot of monthly payments going out that aren't even necessary at all, like Netflix, for example. I mean, there's these people that I know. They just type in a movie name and then put watch free online, and they just watch it free on one of these websites. And that is totally wrong, and you shouldn't do that. The truth is that if you want the freedom of having your own business, it does take sacrifices. But if you're like me and you wanted it more than anything in the world, those sacrifices don't even feel like sacrifices because you're so heavily focused on your goal. Another thing that I just want to mention, and I can't believe that I'm actually promoting this. In fact, I'm going to say that I'm not promoting it, but I'm just going to let you know that it exists. Right? There is this community on YouTube that I came across that talk about this thing called silent quitting. And I'd never come across this concept before. And as someone who used to work extremely hard, when I was watching a video about this, I was thinking, oh, it was like a light bulb went off. Let me elaborate. There are people on YouTube who talk about methods that you can use to basically do the absolute bare minimum at work and have people not really notice. So you're not going above and beyond anymore for an employer that really doesn't give a shit about anyone. Instead, you're putting yourself first and you're turning up and you're having it in your mind that you are here to be paid, so you'll go there, you'll put in the hours, and the work that you do will be the absolute bare minimum that you need for people to not notice that you're actually slacking. I'm just the messenger here. Now, I was never this type of employee. I was always that above and beyond, juggling everything, doing everybody's job type of employee, right? I was an idiot. Okay? I was the dummy because I literally put my mental health on the back burner for my old job. I had full-blown breakdowns because I was so overworked. And yes, I was very respected for that. And I also had a lot of power over my employers because they knew that I would do the work of like 3 employees, so they didn't want to lose me. But eventually, I still got made redundant, along with so many other valuable members of staff that I knew were hard workers. This was all around 2020 when basically like 50% of the UK lost their job. I mean, yes, it was the biggest blessing in the end. However, the point that I'm making is these employers, majoritively, just see you as a number, and they don't care about your well-being. You think that if you work harder for them, you'll somehow get either promoted or recognised for your hard work, but a lot of the time they actually keep you in that lower profession because they know how much work you do. So sometimes this can actually stop you from being promoted, because when you get promoted into these higher positions, you notoriously do less work. One thing I will say though about this silent quitting is that from a hard worker's perspective, I have worked with these types of people before, and whether they've been aware of it or not, you are doing a disservice to the other employees because they're all having to pick up the slack. And that's something that you have to bear in mind. For me, one of the things that made it so stressful was having a bunch of agency staff there being paid actually more than me, and they were doing basically nothing. This is what I would call silent quitting. They did the absolute bare minimum. The only time that I would actually recommend that you take on this mentality is if it is a means to an end first off, and if you're not going to be affecting your fellow employees by doing this, because it is not fair on them. But the general rule of thumb is that if your intention is to leave this job and start a business, you have to put yourself first. Don't make the mistake that I made and work to the absolute bone for an employer that doesn't give a shit about you. You want to put all of that deep focus energy into your business. That's what I would say. Also, another thing is, don't be afraid to take your time with everything that you do. If you take the time to do things properly, instead of rushing around and stressing yourself out, that is the much better approach. This type of thing is a marathon, it's not a sprint. You can have it in your mind that you want to leave this job and make a plan in your mind that you will progress to eventually leaving. I was planning on leaving for years. And when I look back, it all made sense and it was fine because I was building all these building blocks behind the scenes. Because I took so much time in the background learning about production, colour grading, video editing, etc. When it came to the point where I was put on furlough, which is a thing that we had in the UK, and I was getting paid by my employer, but I didn't have to go into work. The whole time during lockdown, I was creating videos, and luckily, I had all of that background with music production and video production that when I pivoted over to YouTube, I had all of those skills under my belt. And I also had all of the savings as well. You can almost see it like you're a caterpillar and you have to go into that cocoon. And when you're in that cocoon, it's like you're all mushy and slimy and everybody else is looking at you and they're like, ew, what is that weird cocoon thing? What is it doing? Why don't you just be a butterfly already? Where's the pretty wings? But you know, while you're in that cocoon, eventually one day, you're just gonna fly out. And then everyone will be like, oh wow, where's that butterfly come from? It's so beautiful. Do not underestimate the cocoon. I hope that this video was insightful for you guys, and if you have any tips or stories, definitely comment them down below. I said at the beginning of this video that this was very close to my heart, and it really is, because I don't want anyone to feel like their life is being stolen from them by some crappy job. Your life is valuable, your time is valuable, and you should be able to live the life of your dreams. I'm here to tell you that it is in reach. So thank you to everyone who likes, comments, shares and subscribes. And a special thank you to every single person who donates to this channel. It really does help a great deal. Love you, bye. You know